Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Today, my guest is Shane Brenden. I loved Shane. This was such an easy-flowing conversation. We really hit it off. He's got a new album. It came out yesterday. It's called Either Way, Pretty Funny. We'll talk about that. And I kind of dragged Shane into some of my comedy snobbery along the way. I really clicked with this guy. I like him a lot. Here's Shane Brenden. So my new attempt to get listeners is I'm asking comedians about Taylor Swift so I can put in the episode title. Shane Brenden says Taylor Swift is
probably not great for the NFL.
Oh, I like that. That's a good hot take.
Like, I'm a college football guy more so than an NFL guy, but I think if Taylor was switched, she's such a distraction from what's really going on. And I believe that if I were in the Chiefs locker room, if I had a problem with all the shine that my teammate's girl is getting, instead of focusing on like me as, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes or something like that, then I would internalize that, because that would break down team dynamics. If I came at you like, yo, why is your girl always getting all the coverage, dog? Like, so because of that, now I'm burying all that. I'm burying what I really feel inside. And while we're at practice, I'm not even focused on the game or what we're supposed to be doing, because I'm so heated thinking about the things I want to say to Kelsey about his lady being in all the games. Basically, she is a Yoko for the Chiefs. Kansas City is going to lose the football team. And you know what? That's fine. That's fine. I don't like them anyway.
Hey, you gave me my episode headline. Great talking to you. Thanks a lot. So my take on Taylor, that we'll actually talk about comedy. So I grew up in the Northeast, so Springsteen is our god, and I've seen Springsteen 50 times. And then I went to see Taylor Swift, and I would tell you this. After seeing Taylor Swift, if Bruce and the guys want to tell me, hey, we're going to stand at one end of the arena and play guitars for 2.5 hours, that's nice. I'm no longer impressed. Like, she put on quite the show.
I'm not taking anything away from her as far as being an entertainer. From what I hear, she is phenomenal. But hey, keep it in your arena, all right? Don't bring it to our arena. Let us watch some football.
She's really bad at rooting. Kelsey will do something, and she's just over the top with the hugging everybody in the skybox. It just seems very contrived.
I talk shit, but I would also, if I got an invite to be in that box, I'd be there in a heartbeat. Hang out.
Of course. I dug enough of a hole for us. Let's talk comedy. You've got an album. An album. Why an audio album? It is called Either Way, Pretty Funny, but why an album?
I didn't realize that it was weird that I was only putting out an album until I started talking to people about it. And I didn't think anything about it. Everybody's putting out specials, right? Or you can call it a special. You can upload.
Oh, wait. Let me jump in there, because that's one of my pet peeves. No problem anybody putting out anything, but I think we've gotten a little carried away with, here's my latest special. Now, I've talked about this with other comics. I don't know where the line is, but at one end, I'll put George Carlin at Carnegie Hall, and at the other end, it's somebody's 8 minutes on Tuesday night at the Chuckle Hut. Yeah. Those two things are not equal. I think there's some combination of who you are and what's the room, right? So if Adam Sandler plays the Chuckle Hut on Tuesday night and puts it out, it's a special. If somebody else plays Carnegie Hall on a Saturday night in the middle of the New York Comedy Festival, that's a special. But somewhere in there, I'm with you. Yeah. So I distracted you, but not everything.
No, I mean, I'll be 100% honest. I came up, when I first started, I was like anybody else that gets into comedy. I found the albums. I found the Kyle Kinanes, the Pete Holmeses, and the Lewis Blacks. I found all their stuff and their albums, and I just listened to them religiously, right? And then later on, I was like, oh, yeah, there's specials. Let me watch these specials. You know what I mean? And with these guys I named too, this was like, I'd find like their first record, and I listened to it over and over again. I even did that thing that a lot of comics do, is you just start doing bad impersonations of your heroes. Like, I was basically doing Kinane for the first 2 years of doing open mics and all that. And then you start watching their specials after a couple years in. And it's special then. Not to say, look, I'm putting out a record. This is my first album. I love it. It's basically the first decade and some change of me trying to figure out how to do stand-up, figuring out some bits, and then figuring out about 45, 50 minutes worth of stuff that I'm like, okay, if people listen to this today or in 10 years, I'll still be okay with it. But is it a special? It is not. The next thing I do hopefully I will have leveled up and I'll feel confident in myself. And there'll be like a kind of demand. But if I put a special out, you wouldn't be talking to another comic in my head. My name wouldn't pop up in your head. Like, not everybody's putting out something special. Like, I want my special to be special. But yeah, people are like, why didn't you do the visuals? We did do visuals, and it's just to chop up and throw out there on socials just to stir the pot up a little bit. But I don't think I ever had any plans on putting out the first thing I ever do, like on my YouTube page, is, hey, check out my special, because it ain't special.
I love that it's an album. Quick on me, I ran SiriusXM Comedy for 10 years. I run the comedy properties at Live One Slacker. So I schedule comedy albums. Yeah. So I'm a bit snobby about this. It bothers me when Dave Chappelle wins the Grammy for Best Comedy Album, when I love Dave, but I'm not sure what he's doing as a comedy album as opposed to what you're doing. I hope you win the Grammy because you are putting out a comedy album, but that's neither here nor there. But I love it because as things have trended more towards video, a lot of stuff's not coming out for audio. And there are all these artists that I want to play and I would play the heck out of, but their stuff just doesn't exist in an audio format. Part of that is a royalties war with Pandora. I get it, totally get it. But it just sucks that the old school album has gone away.
Yeah. So I'm fighting the good fight. I just put out an album. But also, it's just like put out something. I'm already, when I'm working and I'm going on the road, I finally have something that I could push besides stick or some small pens or something like that. Hey, you liked what I just did in there? Here's a whole hour worth of stuff you didn't hear. Merch. I think I'm about 10 years behind the times and all this. I don't know how this is going to affect my career, but I just like it this way.
It's great. I've got a couple of years on you. We used to go to the record stores when that was a thing, and there'd be a big barrel of the nice price. And there was always Carlin cassettes in there. That's how I found a bunch of his early stuff. Anybody my age can probably do Eddie Murphy's special from memory, the Raw Delirious one. Hasn't aged so well.
Yeah, it's funny. When I went back and watched that randomly, maybe during the pandemic, after 5 minutes in, I was like, damn, all right, shit, forgot how this goes.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think all art, you have to judge it by its time, because I was there in 1983. I was a kid. Nobody was walking around going, oh, Eddie Murphy, cut that out. We were all laughing our ass off.
It was a different time. So,
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'd like to know more about Don't Tell Comedy and your involvement with it. I'm seeing every day there's an article about it as I put this podcast together. I'm seeing more and more articles about it. So how did you get involved with that? And you're programming the Portland room? Like, I'd like to know everything about it.
I met Kyle, the guy who runs Don't Tell, the CEO there. We met years ago when I was doing Sketchfest in San Francisco, and it was brand new. I think he was in one of my showcases and hanging out. And he was like, hey, man, I'm doing this little private show at some rich kid's parents' house. Do you want to jump in? I'll get you some extra bucks. I was like, sure. So it was like me and a buddy of mine, Steph Tolov. We drove down there. It was in somebody's living room, and they had a little poster in the back that just said, don't tell, with a lady's lips and like that. It looked like an Ashley Madison poster. And I was like, this is cool. What do you do? I'm just trying to set up stand-up shows in places like private events and places where you wouldn't expect. So people's houses, backyards, stuff like that. I was like, all right, this is pretty cool, man. And we kept in touch. And then over the years, once they started filming sets, like I said, we had crossed paths a couple of times, just doing festivals and stuff like that. So I always followed what they were doing. And then he hit me up. He's like, hey, man, I want you to get on and tape your little set, tape a set of your own for one of these little showcases that we're doing. I actually had to do two. Went down to Santa Monica and did the first one, but that crowd was so dog shit that everyone had to tape their set over again, because I don't know, it's a Santa Monica crowd. Those people, they saw the cameras around, so they all just tightened up. No one got anything. So they brought us all back, went to Santa Barbara, better crowd, killed that one, and then that came out. But once they started spreading out all over the country, he knew that I was up here in Portland, and he was like, would you be interested in bringing Don't Tell up there? And I almost didn't do it because I'm like, hey, man, I live here, but I'm not really here that much anymore. I'm starting to work very bad B and C rooms. I'm out there. So, but I got a buddy of mine who's another Portland comic. I was like, if I can bring in another guy to help me co-produce, we'll do it. And I'm glad we did it, because it really is a great show to have in a local scene. because a lot of the comics that come from out of town too, they'll hit us up like, hey, I heard you got a Don't Tell. I'm doing like a one-nighter at the Helium on a Thursday. Are you going to do a Don't Tell on a Friday? I'm like, yeah. So we can piggyback off what the clubs are doing, and these comics coming in can get a little extra cash in their pocket. And some of these people that maybe have never been to a comedy club but know about some of these bigger names from social media and stuff, they're surprised as hell when they walk in and, I don't know, like a Ralph Barbosa is here in a sneaker shop for some reason on a Friday. So I think it's a good thing to have in like mid-level scenes, B scenes, other than the Austins, the New York, and LAs. So I'm glad I'm part of it.
As a performer, is it weird? I have so many questions about the setup. So let's say we're at a sneaker shop. Is there a riser or is there a stage? You just fly with the audience? What are they sitting on? Like what kind of room? It's like,
all right, for instance, the sneaker shop is one of our popular go-to spots. It seats about 75, 80. You're performing in front of a wall of sneakers. This is not like a Foot Locker or anything like that in the mall. These are like expensive, like a boutique, high-end sneaker. Like cool, hip. It's also like a NBA, retro clothing store. So it's got all the tchotchkes, and it's like a cool vibe, but atmosphere. Crowd is into it. They're close. They're right there. We got lights. We got the cameras. We got the whole setup. And then on the up end of the spectrum, we have this place called Hallowed Halls, is where I recorded my album, which is a music hall venue where proper stage lighting, a stage, and all that stuff. So we have the whole spectrum of venues. The craziest thing about Don't Tell is these people don't know where it's going to be until the day of. They don't know who's going to be there, but they always sell out. It makes you think, like, for years, like comics, are we putting too much priority on how cool our poster is and all that stuff and who's there? Because these people are buying tickets and they have no idea who's going to be there. So you're selling a night out. You're selling a whole vibe if they're just buying it blindly.
As that brand grows, is there more pressure to make sure you've got an A-lister, a solid headliner in there? Or people coming to shows and be like, oh, it's just six regular points, whatever.
I don't feel the pressure. It's, hey, look where you live. I know where I live. The Don't Tells in LA are way different than the Don't Tells in Portland. I had a lady, we like to ask people, have you been here before when they're checking in? And one lady goes, yeah, I've been the one in LA. Saw a bunch of famous people. I was like, cool, you ain't seeing that tonight, but thank you for coming. And they had a good time. The pressure is just to make sure we don't put on a shit show and just book good comics that again get people their money's worth. I guess it's just like any other show.
So as a producer can mean many things. I'm just really curious about the logistics of this. Are you showing up early? Are you plugging in speakers? Are you running the room? You're booking everybody?
I do everything. Between me and my buddy Brent Lowry, another good, funny Portland comic. Don't Tell is an exercise in how well you can pack chairs and equipment into a Subaru Crosstrack, and and time management. Like if we want doors at 7:30 and I live 30 minutes away and this place will only open the doors to us at 6:30, can me and another guy successfully set up 110 chairs, 2 spotlights, a PA system, and make the lineup and make sure these knuckleheads show up, the comics, on time. And then afterwards, make sure we go into the system so everybody can get paid. So you're doing everything. You get paid, but Don't Tell also gets paid and the comics get paid too. It's like just producing and running your own show, but the cushion, I guess the safety net is, I know that Don't Tell is going to promote the hell out of it. They do a lot of targeted ads and all that. So they're spending money to make sure there's butts and seats. That way I know I'm not setting all these comics up, most of my friends, to come to a half-empty room and have a boring show. You know what I mean? So every show, you can basically bank on it being a good packed-out crowd. That's one thing you can guarantee from a comics perspective.
Are you running into knucklehead no-show? Ah, shame, bro. Sorry, man. I meant to make it, but it's all right. I just can't like, or are people professional?
I mean, the guys, there's one guy in particular I can think of, but he flakes on everyone. And that's a character flaw for him. But it's not so much that people not showing up. The problem is when you're in a scene, the problem is there are a lot of comics that know you are a booker for Don't Tell, and they will bug you about getting a spot. And it's just like, you walk that fine line. Like, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but I'm just like, man, I'll try to get you something, but it's just like, I've just seen you eat shit all over town, every opportunity you can. And then you're always hammered around me. Hey man, when are you going to give me a spot? It's just, it's not going to happen, brother. That's the hard part, is trying to like duck and dodge people who just be funny on stage. And then word will get around and be like, yo, you should book so-and-so. Don't wait until I'm at a bar and look, Shane's had like 2 or 3 drinks. He looks like he's vulnerable now. Let me ask him for a spot. Because that has happened in the past, and that has worked in the past. And I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, there's, and again, I'm a guy in a basement recording a podcast, but I've been, as I've called it, showbiz adjacent for most of my career. And you got to learn how to roll. You got to learn that when there's a time to ask and when there's a time to, all right, Shane's just at the bar with his friends. It's not time to be like, hey, man, we do my podcast.
Yeah. It's, people get very creative when they want to get booked for things. And I guess, call me old school again, but I came up at a time where it's just like, hey, if you want to get booked, just try to do well in front of the people that you know. Like, you walk into a venue, oh, okay, I recognize that so-and-so, she books that show. That so-and-so, he books that show. Let me maybe not do all new stuff tonight for 15 minutes. Maybe let me just try to do my best 10. So these people will be like, huh, that guy was pretty funny. Maybe I should put him on my show. To me, it sounds like so simple. But man, some of these kids are just like, they're focused on everything but what they're doing on stage to get known, to get followers, to get booked. I'm just like, oh, dude, this sucks so bad.
You brought a couple things to mind. All right, let me, in order on my mental list. So back to the hustle culture and comedy albums. So when we first started playing comedy records on Sirius, this was a new thing, right? There was no comedy radio before. You couldn't do it on FM. You couldn't play anything. So satellite radio comes along. We start playing the records, and we start hearing from artists, you're stealing my material. You're burning my stuff. Nobody's coming to see me, right? So we go through that. Then some comics realized, oh, I'm being heard on Sirius and more people know who I am and they're coming to see me. But then the royalty check showed up. I saw a pretty known comedian one time backstage, and I was his best friend because he had just gotten an $80,000 royalty check. So suddenly we went from thieves to, oh, how come you're not playing my stuff? Can you play my stuff more? Can you play my stuff? And it's, no, I'm playing Louis C.K. It's 2005.
Yeah, man. The hustle, you're talking about the hustle culture. I think it's just like with the clips, with the crowd work stuff and all that, the pressure to have to post clips every day or multiple times a week. It's just, sometimes I get upset, but I'm just like, hey, the algorithm, the industry is rewarding these folks because they're doing what I guess the algorithm and what people want right now, which is every day there's a crowd work bit or just a half-baked premise. There's something but there's something every day. And I can't get mad that this person will get followers and get all this stuff because I'm not doing it because I, A, don't do crowd work, and B, I'm not going to throw out a half-baked premise just because it's Tuesday and it's 12:30 and the algorithm says I need to do it. Maybe I'm not hustling as much as I should be. Yeah. I'm just working on the jokes.
No, I was going to ask you about feeding the beast. It's got to be just, like you said, just relentless. When YouTube Shorts came out, I played around with a little bit of pulling shorter clips from this show and putting them up. And you'd get like this little burst of, 3,000 views in an hour. And then it would go straight to 0. And it was like, all right, is this, I'm just a dumb podcast, but, is this actually converting to anything? And I have to feed it every day. And then I imagine you're up on stage, maybe not you, but somebody else going, oh, here's an opportunity for me to pull a clip. Let me work this clown in the front row with the orange sweater to pull 8 minutes and get 3 days of clips out of that.
Dude, or you could see it in the room. I've been on shows where I've seen some comics, they're just going through their material, but then someone will pipe up and then they just change. They snap. They're like, oh, this is a moment let me do the crowd work. This is the clippable moment. You know what I mean? And they get that, and then they're out. And like I said, I used to be a big hater. I'm trying to tell myself now, hey, don't hate. It's just not my cup of tea. It's not meant for me. So I'm just like, all right, that's what they're doing. You do that. Everybody has their own journey, so to speak, or whatever. But it doesn't make it any better when one of my good buddies is Kinane, and I'm on the road with him for his tour and all this stuff now. And me and him sit and basically talk about what me and you're talking right now, just the crowd work guys. And not everybody does crowd work or shit. They're great at it. There's a bunch of people that are great at it, or a handful of people that are great at it. But then there's just a majority of the people that are out there that people see on the internet are just terrible. And then that makes a crowd, that makes people think that, hey, you know what? I'm going to go. I like these people online, these crowd work guys. Let me go to my local comedy club or just some local show. And then those are the people that start chirping at you. And then they're confused when you tell them to shut the hell up. They're like, well, no, I thought this was, no, I'm just trying to help you out, bro. Like earnestly. They're not trying to be dicks. They just think, but my favorite guy on TikTok does this. I'm just trying to help you. I think you're funny too, which is a real thing that some bro said to me after I chewed him out after a say. I thought you were really funny, man. I was just trying to give you some prompts or something to go off of. And I was just like, no, dude, please don't do that. That's not how it works.
There's a generation, and I'm on Old Man Mountain now, growing up, flipping through things on TikTok on their phone who don't, I don't want to use the word understand, but, and I don't want to explain comedy to a comedian, but the art of the callback, the art of the line I said here was set up 17 minutes ago. There's a whole arc to it, which is a lot different than comedian slams heckler.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no way any of these new, I wouldn't even call them comedy fans. I think they're just fans of the TikTok. And there's no way they would know anything about a callback. The algorithm or the format doesn't allow for a video to be long enough for a callback or anything like that, or they don't know about the rule of threes. They don't know about any of the basic stuff that any comic worth their weight has worked on for however long, because that doesn't exist to them as viewers, and it honestly probably doesn't even exist to the comics that they're watching. They're just, so you got me fired up, man, talking about this.
I'll give you a real example aside from the hypothetical 20-something on their phone. And my audience is going to be sick of me saying this because I've been saying this to every comic. So I watch a lot of specials because of what I do. And 100% of the time, not 99, 100% of the time, my wife shows up 37 minutes into the hour with a laundry basket, stares at the TV for a minute, and then goes, is this guy funny? And he was, till you made me hit pause, and you don't understand that thing he said there. He set up 3 things ago, and it was a misdirect. And again, I'm not going to explain comedy to you, but it's, he is funny, but you can't just walk in the middle. And
that's, you know what? Yeah, put that on my tombstone. That happens to me all the time when I'm watching comedy. My wife will come in and ask me, she'll ask if this person funny. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just trying to, or I'm trying to figure it out. She's like, you do comedy, you should know if someone's funny. I'm like, okay, man, all right, chill. I do this. Because she'll be like, are you watching this? Are you enjoying it? Because I haven't heard you laugh. I'm like, that doesn't mean I don't think it's funny. I don't know when, but like a lot of comics, something happened to where I stop. And there's times I genuinely will laugh if something is just silly enough. But now I just, oh, that's good. That's funny. I'll acknowledge it.
I am so with you. I call this Emperor of Rome syndrome because, again, not a comic, no kidding, not a performer, didn't want to be a performer, but sitting at Sirius for 10 years, listening to comedy radio, 9-10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and it was everybody's best of the best, right? So it's not just you being funny, it's the one you put down on record, right? So it's everybody's best of the best. And along the way, I stopped laughing. But the same thing, I can watch a set and I'll just do the thing the comedians in the back of the room do is go, oh, wow, that's a great show. Wow, that's hilarious. Oh, what a good callback. Yeah. And then every now and then somebody will set up a misdirect and I'll actually do a belly laugh. I treasure that stuff when somebody actually gets me and I don't see the, back to the word algorithm. I remember sitting with one of my hosts we were at when JFL used to have the Chicago. Somebody you've heard of, we were at their set and I felt bad because it was like back in grade school when you would graph a sentence, like I could see it. It was like, okay, premise, exaggeration, thing that didn't actually happen, callback. And I'm like, dude, I could graph your set for you. It drove me insane that I had gotten deep in
the math comics. It's all formula. A plus B equals C. Yeah. Again, I'm trying not to be a hater. I'm working on myself.
No, I'm dragging you down. All right, let me go the other way. Kyle Kinane's chunk on the Fast and Furious. I'm putting in a class with Eddie Murphy Barbecue, Baseball and Football by Carlin. That is an all-time chunk. Please tell him I said that. He'll be like,
hey, you know what? It's so nuts. Working with him it's a double-edged sword for me because, for one, it's just crazy that now we're pals and I used to listen to him when I first started. I'm like, and I told you in the beginning, like, I was just doing a bad Kinane for the first 2 years. And you fast forward about 11 years later, now we're neighbors because he left LA. He lives up here and he takes me out on the road with him. So over the years, I've been able to watch him like we were at that Fast and Furious movie. We went to the Fast and Furious. It was me and a couple of him and a couple comics. We were laughing so hard about how ridiculous it was. And we were all sitting around afterwards. He threw out like just one line from that actually made the bit. And then to see him go from, we're there, we're watching this. Yeah, this funny kind of throwaway. We're in a circle of comics and then fully stretch it out. I forgot how long the bit is, but it's just that's to see how his brain works in comedy. It makes me have to step my shit up, and also makes me furious because I'm just like, why am I even trying to do this? I'm glad I have to go. I'm glad I go before you to get people okay with the idea of comedy. I don't ever want to have to follow it.
I love those films. I saw the first one at Blockbuster Video. Nice. I just pulled it off the shelf. Nobody cared about that franchise. Let me rent this. You know, those guys have gone from stealing DVD players to international Avengers.
Somehow Ludacris is just a tech guy that knows everything about computers and all that. I don't buy that. Tyrese is in space. What are we doing? What are we doing right now?
So I think Kyle's a great example of everything we've talked about, whether it's short clips or My Wife in the Laundry Basket. There's a vibe there, right? So at some point, endorphins are kicking into your brain. You're just feeling the room. You're along for the ride with the performer. And I just don't think the short clips get you there. They can be funny, and comedy can come in many forms. So I don't want to snob too much, but there is something for, all right, I've bought into what this performer's selling. Let me just go along for the ride.
Yeah, those fans they stick with you. They trust you. They trust that you're going to give them that performance or that kind of feeling when they first discovered you. And Kyle's fans they're great. They're a great crowd. I love performing in front of them because I know that these folks are here because they like comedy. I've had to open for these Kill Tony guys, these 1 minute dudes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're like, I hate that show. I think it's bad for comedy. I think it gives people the wrong idea of what stand-up is. Because some of these kids that go on there and they'll get a viral 1 minute clip from the show. Next thing you know, I walk into the local comedy club and that kid's face is on the poster for a one-nighter. I'm like, all right, yeah, they got millions of views online, but they only have 1 or 2 1 minute clips. Now I go hate watching. I'm like, let me see you struggle. Do you have 45 minutes? Can you do an hour? Because you've only been around since breakfast, so let's see what happens. And I went. They can do 5. Unfortunately, I saw this one kid. He packed it out on a Wednesday night, and his fans were exactly who I thought they would be, just other incel-looking little dudes. And he went up there, and for about the first 5-10 minutes, he just said all the stuff that you're not supposed to say, and then had nothing, and it turned into a Q&A. I left, but from a buddy of mine who works there, he's like, dude, it was pretty bad. For about 35 minutes, he was just like, what else you guys got? Ask me some questions. Let's go. Show me, you guys got any pictures of hot girls? I'm like, this is what it is now. This is what it is.
Oh, wow. Wow. I don't want to get vulgar here, so I'll pull the final word of what I'm about to set up. But I teach a couple college classes, and I would explain to them, and I would just suddenly say, and then I punched her in the, and a naughty word there, and I would get a laugh. And I would say to them, I didn't even tell a joke, guys. I didn't set that up. I just said something out of nowhere and made it super vulgar, and you guys are laughing. I'm like, that doesn't mean I can get up and do 10.
Damn. I'd take that class if my professor said that every now and then. That'd wake me up.
It's a bit of a departure from my normal personality. All right. I hate to ask things that guests have been asked 500 times, but you've got 2 things on your bio, and I'm sure you know what they are, that I've got to ask about. Your first stand-up set in Afghanistan.
I was deployed, and that was like my second or third deployment at the time. Yeah, I was with this mobilized unit. We were just at one of the smaller outposts in the Helmand province, and we were only supposed to be there for a couple of days to get some work done. And we were supposed to leave, but there was a sandstorm, so the helos were down. That was going to transport us out for at least the next 48 hours. And in that 48 hours, it happened to be Christmas, right? So that post anyway, they have what they call MWR, like morale, welfare, and recreation. So like to give people a break. It's Christmas time. It sucks. We're all out here. It was a base of like maybe 300-400 people. So they're like, hey, in the cafeteria area, we're going to do a talent show. And so I saw flyers all over the place, and me and my buddies in my unit were like, shit, we're stuck here. Let's just go and see what's going on. After about the 4th or 5th guy I saw go up with an acoustic guitar and play a Radiohead song or a Creed cover, I was just like losing my mind. And I was a guy in my unit who I talked shit. I cracked jokes all the time because that was my fight or flight. And I was back there getting pretty loose lip, making fun of all these guys. And then there was a couple of dudes sitting around. They're like, why don't you go up there and tell some fucking jokes? Why don't you go up there and, crack some jokes? People on the front want to hear what you're saying. Trying to defend their buddies because I'm like roasting the hell out of these guys. And I was like, all right, I'll sign up. Can I sign up? Let's do it. And I went up there. I signed up. And they let me go up there. And I did what I know now to be just panic, riffing, crowd work. But it all worked because I just talked about it was already, it all sucked. Being out there sucked. The food sucked. Those guys playing guitar sucked. Making fun of the higher ups that were sitting in the front row. If I was to say any of the stuff I said to any of those guys without a microphone, without that context, they would have put me in the brig. That I would have been busted down so many ranks. I would have gotten so much trouble. But because I went up there and the host and MC was like, hey, this is so-and-so. He's going to tell some jokes. He's a funny guy or whatever. You can feel people lean in. They're like, all right, what's he going to do? And I just roasted people for a good 5-10 minutes. But then the next day, there was a couple people, there was like, I would be walking by and they'd be like, hey man, you were pretty funny last night. Or one of the captains that I was getting after, he walked up to me, I saluted him, I was like, sir, he's like, do you remember me? I was like, yes, sir. He's like, you were pretty funny. You're lucky that shit was funny. I would have busted your ass. I thought about that. And when shortly after the deployment was over, I was home stationed in San Diego. And in San Diego, we had, I think, 4 dedicated comedy clubs. You got the Madhouse Comedy Club, American Comedy Company, Comedy Store La Jolla, Comedy Palace. So I went on leave for the whole month when we got back. And I had nothing to do. So I started popping into these comedy clubs, my first time ever, and just sitting in the back at open mics. And I was like, some of these guys are funny. Most of these guys are really bad. If they can be really bad, then I know I can go up there and be pretty bad for a while. That was the bug. I did the first set in Afghanistan. And I think I told somebody I'm going to give it a shot when I get back home. And I just followed through. And then I just didn't stop going after. It took me about 2 months from the first time I went to an open mic to write something and then build up the courage to go up. But then once I got up, I don't think I missed a day where I didn't get up on stage for the first 2-3 years. I was going after it.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, I'm still going after it. Still.
That story. I'm a big fan of Bob Hope, and unfortunately, Hope gets judged a lot by maybe hanging on a little couple too many NBC specials where he's 85 and reading off the cue cards. But the younger Bob Hope was quick and just getting back to the art of it. I'm sure you've seen clips of the USO shows, and in one way, they just seem really dated. They are from another time. But something you said, he would get up and just he'd get a little bit of information about the locals and then do the pacing, and then mug for the camera, mug for the audience. A typical Hope joke would be like, I see Captain Johnson's here. Must be for the free hot dogs. And then he'd mug and get a laugh off it. It's not even a good joke, but just like everybody like, Captain Johnson. It just has this vibe of we're all in this together.
It really is easy. When I think back, the only reason I did well is because it was the pressure release valve. Everybody knew, it was all common knowledge. Everything sucked. You're not really allowed to talk about it, but for some reason, if you go up there and someone gives you the title of a comic or a comedian, then you're allowed to go ahead and let her rip. So good times.
And you also did looks like a pretty cool show with the Trailblazers. I'd love to know more about it.
For a couple of years, because I moved up here to Portland with the wife in 2018. And I'm a big NBA guy. And a buddy of mine, there's a comic named Ian Carmel, who used to be here from Portland, now writer for years for The Late Show, James Corden, all that stuff. Real good guy, and became buddies over the years. Right when I got up here, he was like, hey, because he used to work for NBC Sports, he'd be the goofy comedian guy they cut to, and he'd say something weird or whatever. He reached out to them and said, hey, I got a guy who just moved up there. He's a big NBA guy. He's a Blazer fan. I think he'd be perfect for this thing you guys are looking for. Because they were doing auditions all over the Pacific Northwest, from Portland to Seattle, for a crew of guys to do like an official pregame and then postgame show for the Portland Trailblazers. Yeah, I went in a couple rounds to audition with a different sets of guys, and I just knew, I was like, okay, I'm funnier than. It was weird because they had you separated into, hey, if you're here to audition as the funny guy, go over here and sit in this corner with these group of funny looking dudes. if you're here to be like the straight up, I'm the sports guy, I'm going to tell you the X's and O's, go over there. But they didn't know, like, I can talk ball. I know basketball and all this stuff like that. So I think I knew I had the job right off the bat, and it ended up being a good gig, easy money. Just sitting, I got paid to watch basketball and talk about it and just crack jokes for a couple of years. Yeah. That's me not saying no to a good opportunity.
Are you getting VO work? Because you've got great
yes.
pipes.
Me, again, I don't say no to opportunities presented. I do VO stuff all the time. There's nothing better than just showing up, reading a couple of lines in a booth, and then going home and getting a check later, and for doing minimal to no work. So I'll take it.
I'm impressed you're still going to a booth. As a longtime radio guy, one of the things, the pandemic, for like about 36 hours, we were like, what are we going to do? And then everybody figured out how to broadcast from home. You'd see people on CNN when they're in their living room. It was great. We figured out. So back in the day, so clearly you and I are 3,000 miles from each other and we're doing this and it sounds fine. Back in the day, I'd have to bug you like, hey, do you mind going over to the local radio station in Portland and we're going to hook it up over a thing and it's going to cost $200 and it's 2 hours out of your day. So like a long way of saying, I'm impressed you're not just recording in your basement.
It's been a while since I've been to a booth. What I ended up doing, especially during the pandemic, is my little office space in the house just became all-in-one podcast recording studio / I go audition for a lot of things, but during the pandemic, they just want you to self-tape everything. So one corner of my office was the audio podcast equipment set up. And in the other corner, there was like my camera and then I had my lights and my backdrop pulled down so I could sit there and talk to the camera and do these auditions, which it does suck. I used to book a lot more stuff when I could be in the room with a casting director, especially as a comic, because we could work the room. There were gigs that I knew I was going to book before we even started doing the lines, because I would go in and just start working the room like a comic does, talking shit and riffing and making people laugh. And then they'd be like, oh, you're pretty great. I'm like, are we going to read the lines? They're like, oh yeah, just go ahead and read the lines. And then boom, you get the gig. But it's hard to show how you start to turn the charm on when you're just recording yourself in your office, trying to keep your voice down because the baby's sleeping and your wife is just trying to have a nice quiet time in the living room.
The amount of times, again, my wife in the laundry basket, I'm recording the podcast and she thinks she's sneaking down and is totally distracting me. And you're married. You just don't want to pick the fight of, can you not do the laundry when I'm recording? Well, then you do the laundry. Like, it's just like, I just eat it and hit stop. And it's interesting to me that you say about working the room, because as we're doing this, I'm finding the opposite. So I look the way I look, and in person, I give off suit vibes to comics. So I'm finding doing this in this style, I'm connecting a lot easier, because hopefully it seems like you did. We get a minute in, you go, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about at least. Whereas I walk in and I've got my Dockers on and you're like, all right, here's another radio guy, here's the suit. So this actually works better for me.
That's great, man. I figured anybody that has a pod called Daily Comedy News probably knows what they're talking about when it comes to comedy. If that makes you feel any better, I didn't come into this skeptical at all. The absurdity of someone be like, all right, let me do a podcast to focus only on comedy and just have no idea what they're talking about or who they're talking to. Like, now that I say that out loud, I have done a couple of interviews where the guy was like, so you have a joke about Steph Curry? And to this guy's defense,
right?
He's a sports, the set. I don't know why they sent me over, but the guy just does a sports talk radio kind of thing. And I PR people, they're just like, oh, he has a joke about basketball to talk to. And I get there and I'm talking to the guy. So you have a joke about Steph Curry? I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's crazy, man. I was like, yeah. He's like, how did you come up with it? I'm like, oh, you really want me to? I'm not going to break down a joke for you, man. It's just, dude, good on you. Good on you. I'm like, okay.
I'll tell you on the flip side, sometimes you get a guest who you ask a 3-minute question, you just get a yeah back. So here's my safety list. Don't answer any of this. What inspired you to get into comedy? Who are your influences? How do you handle hecklers? Do you have any pre-show rituals? How do you balance your career with your family? Those are my like, oh my God, how am I going to pull 20 more minutes out of this dude? But I didn't need to do that today.
But all those questions you just asked me, I can think about all the people that that's all they did. They came right out of the gate. So how'd you get into comedy? What inspired you? And I'm not I'm very grateful. I'm glad to be doing this. Thank you for having me on and all that. But this is my rookie album. You know what I mean? So I'm not used to talking about the material just yet, just selling it. You know what I mean? Like I've spent all these years trying to figure out the material, and then I sell it when I'm on stage. So now this is a different kind of thing where you're like talking about the album. I'm just like, yeah, I think it's good. I'm proud of it. I think you should get it. If not, I don't know. I can't feed my family. I don't know. I don't care. I don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, make sure your peeps put it in Sound Exchange so I actually can play it on the various digital platforms. There's some coinage.
Sure going to be on Sound Exchange. Shout out to Sound Exchange. I love getting those emails that lets me know I got another little deposit in the bank because Sirius is spinning my stuff. So I'm glad for those guys.
Yeah, you were going straight into hot new releases. Good talking to you today.
Thanks for having me. Great talking to you, man. Appreciate it.
Boy, wasn't he fantastic? I really, really liked him. His album is called Either Way Pretty Funny, available now from Blonde Medicine. Nice to see an old-fashioned album, isn't it? I hope he wins the Grammy. Shane Brenden, Either Way Pretty Funny. Really liked him. Hope to have him back someday. And that is your comedy news for today. I'll see you tomorrow.